본격적으로 패널 토론에 들어가기 전에 이 지속가능한 평화와 번영을 위한 지방 외교에 대한 가치를 알리고 또 활성화하기 위해서 많은 애를 쓰고 계시는 세 분의 기조 연설부터 청해 듣겠습니다. 먼저 첫 번째 기조 연설은 섬이라는 지리적인 한계를 뛰어넘어서 글로벌 평화 확산을 위해서 이 지방 정부의 글로벌 가치 외교를 강화해 나가고 계시는 이곳 제주 특별자치도의 오영훈 도지사님께서 함께해 주시겠습니다. 여러분, 제주 특별자치도 오영훈 도지사님을 따뜻한 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
네, 여러분 안녕하십니까. 제주도지사 오영훈입니다. 반갑습니다. 제18회 제주포럼을 맞이했습니다. 오늘 제주포럼 지방외교 세션이라는 이름으로 포럼을 행사를 개최하고 있는데요. 귀한 분들께서 이 자리에 참석해 주고 계십니다. 일본 오키나와 현의 테루야 요시미 부지사님 참석 감사드립니다. 그리고 중국 하이난성 바털 비서장님께서도 참석해 주셨습니다. 감사드립니다. 그리고 오늘 좌장을 맡아주실 미국 터프츠대 이성윤 교수님을 비롯한 패널 여러분께도 고마운 말씀을 드립니다. 전 세계가 정치, 군사, 경제, 환경 등 전방위적인 복합위기 상황에 놓여 있다라고 많은 분들이 이야기하고 있습니다. 기후변화와 자연재해, 신종 감염병, 식량과 에너지 안보, 전쟁과 같은 시대적인 과제들이 넘쳐나고 있습니다. 이러한 글로벌 복합위기는 온 인류가 힘을 모아서 해결해야 하지만 오히려 패권 국가들은 지정학적인 경쟁에 돌입하면서 글로벌 공동협력이 제대로 이루어지고 있지 않고 있습니다. 현재와 같은 상황이 계속되고 있을 때 전통적인 국가외교만으로 문제를 해결할 수 있을지 걱정입니다. 국가외교의 한계를 넘어설 수 있는 더 유연하고 더 탄력적이고 포용적인 교류와 협력을 이끌어낼 지방 외교가 인류 공동의 과제를 해결할 수 있는 해결책으로 대안으로 새롭게 떠오르고 있습니다. 제주 특별자치도도 이와 관련해 오래전부터 이 제주 포럼을 중심으로 최근에는 아시안 플러스 알파 정책에 이르기까지 지방 공공외교를 더욱더 강화해 나가고 있습니다. 아시안 플러스 알파 정책을 추진하기 위해서 저희들은 싱가포르에 6월 23일 날 싱가포르 내 제주 특별자치도청 사무소를 개소하게 됩니다. 그래서 아시안을 넘어 아랍으로 그리고 환태평양 지역까지 지방외교의 영역을 확장해 나갈 생각입니다. 단순히 지방정부가 외교를 하겠다라는 의지에 그치는 것이 아니라 실질적인 교류와 협력의 내용이 있어야 한다고 생각합니다. 저희가 추진하고 있는 새로운 신산업 분야를 몇 가지만 말씀드리겠습니다. 첫 번째는 UAM 사업입니다. 어번 에어 모빌리티, 도심 항공교통 사업이라고 얘기할 수 있죠. 저희들은 한화 시스템, SK텔레콤, 한국공항공사와 컨소시엄을 구성해서 MOU를 체결했습니다. 2025년부터 제주도에서 UAM 관광이 가능할 수 있도록 준비하고 있습니다. 제주도에서 UAM이 성공할 수 있도록 여러분들의 많은 지지와 성원을 부탁드리겠습니다. 새로운 교통수단의 혁명이 될 것이고 새로운 관광시장의 패턴을 완전히 바꾸는 새로운 신산업 분야가 될 것입니다. 이것은 제주뿐만 아니라 하이난성, 오키나와 그리고 아시안 국가들에게까지도 유엔 관광사업은 일상이 될 수 있는 날이 멀지 않았다 생각합니다. 저희특별자치도가 주목하고 있는 핵심 사업 중에 하나는 글로벌 그린 수소 허브 구축 사업입니다. 대한민국에서 수소를 생산하는 일들이 진행되고 있지만 그린 수소를 생산해낼 수 있는 시스템을 갖춘 곳은 대한민국에서도 이곳 제주밖에 없습니다. 제주에는 2022년도 기준 19.1%의 비율을 재생에너지로 발전시켜내고 있습니다. 재생에너지가 앞으로 우리의 미래를 탄소 중립의 시대로 이끌게 될 것입니다. 그렇지만 재생에너지가 갖고 있는 한계도 있습니다. ESS 저장 장치라든가 그리고 수소로의 전환이 미흡하게 되면 보다 효율적인 재생에너지를 사용하기는 어렵습니다. 다행히 우리 제주도는 대한민국의 산자부와 실증 사업을 완료했습니다. 3메가와트 실증 사업을 완료했고 이제 6월 달부터 생산에 들어갑니다. 그리고 올해부터는 12.5메가와트 그린 수소 생산을 위한 실증 사업에 산자부와 함께 시작합니다. 2026년도 되면 12.5메가와트 분량의 수소를 생산할 수 있는 여건이 마련되게 될 것입니다. 장기적으로는 재생에너지와 수소를 에너지원으로 전부 전환할 계획입니다. 그래서 탄소를 배출할 수 있는 자동차는 제주도에 발을 붙이지 못하게 할 생각입니다. 완전히 친환경적인 자동차만이 제주에서 구동될 수 있도록 렌터카든 자동차든 모든 분야에서 바꿔나갈 것입니다. 원래는 그린 수소로 운영되는 수소 버스가 운영되게 될 것이고 머지않아 수소 트램이 제주도 곳곳을 누리게 될 것입니다. 이러한 제주도의 에너지 대전환 정책 그리고 글로벌 그린 수소 허브 구축은 우리 아시아의 여러 도시들과 함께 연대하고 협력해 나가면서 경쟁력을 끌어올리고 부가가치를 더 높이는 방향으로 발전시켜 나가도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 또 하나 저희가 주목하고 있는 신산업 분야는 민간 우주 산업 분야입니다. 최근 대한민국은 누리호 발사를 성공하면서 전 세계 탑7 안에 진입하게 되었습니다. 우주 산업의 탑7에 진입하게 되었습니다. 이제 국가 중심의 우주 산업 육성이 민간 기업으로 이전되는 시기를 맞게 될 것입니다. 이미 그 이전은 이번 누리호 발사를 계기로 시작되었다라고 볼 수 있습니다. 지금은 전남 고흥에서 발사를 하고 있지만 이제 소형 로켓을 발사하기 위해서는 이곳 제주를 찾게 될 것입니다. 그 이유는 대한민국에서 적도 궤도에 가장 가까운 곳은 이곳 제주이기 때문입니다. 쏘아 올리기도 가장 쉽고 그리고 적도 궤도에서 위성을 관제하기도 촬영하기도 가장 쉬운 것은 적도 궤도에서 가장 가까운 제주도의 지상국 서비스가 운영될 때 가능한 것입니다. 제주도에 안테나가 곳곳에 설치될 준비를 하고 있습니다. 이렇듯 발사와 그리고 위성 관제 그리고 활용에 있어서 가장 적절한 장소는 제주일 수밖에 없다는 것입니다. 지난 2021년 11월에 발사했던 베레지 에어로스페이스라는 대한민국의 우주 스타트업 기업이 있습니다. 올해 다시 11월 달 발사를 준비하고 있고 그리고 그런 소형 발사체를 조립하고 그리고 실증 사업을 할 수 있는 공장을 이곳 제주에 만들 계획을 갖고 있습니다. 그리고 하나 시스템을 비롯한 대한민국의 많은 우주 관련 민간 기업들이 제주를 주목하고 있습니다. 현재 제주도에서 지상국 서비스를 운영하고 있는 컨택이라는 회사도 이곳 제주에서 더 큰 도약의 준비를 하고 있습니다. 민간 우주 산업의 육성과 관련해서 저는 제주도의 주변 도시들과 함께 연대하고 협력하며 경쟁력을 높일 수 있도록 준비하고 있다는 말씀도 드립니다. 우리는 이미 주변국 도시들과 함께 연대의 플랫폼을 만들어 왔습니다. 제주는 제주포럼이라는 새로운 국제적 토론회장을 만들어내어서 일본의 주요 도시들과 중국의 주요 도시들, 아시안의 주요 도시들이 참여하고 그 과정에서 지혜의 담론의 장을 만들어내기도 했습니다. 최근 제가 중국 하이난성에서 개최됐던 보아 포럼에 다녀왔습니다. 상당히 국제적 위상이 확인되는 보아 포럼이었고 앞으로 더 발전될 수밖에 없겠구나라는 것을 느끼고 왔습니다. 원래 경제 성장률이 9.5%로 전망된다는 놀라운 이야기 또한 확인할 수 있었습니다. 함께 보아 포럼과 제주 포럼이 윈윈할 수 있는 길이 열려야 한다고 생각합니다. 그리고 또 오늘 오키나와 부지사님께서도 말씀을 주시겠지만 오키나와는 섬관광정책포럼이라는 아이타 포럼을 이미 오래전부터 운영해 왔습니다. 저도 10여 년 전에 그 섬관광정책포럼에 참석했던 기억이 있습니다. 내년에 열리는 섬관광정책포럼에 저도 직접 참가할 생각을 갖고 있습니다. 이렇듯 오키나와 그리고 하이난성, 대한민국의 제주가 주변의 도시들과 연대해서 교류 협력의 장을 선도적으로 만들어 나가고 있고 지방외교의 새로운 전형을 창출해 나가고 있다고 생각합니다. 그런 과정에 함께 하겠습니다. 더 많은 아시안의 도시들이, 더 많은 인도 태평양 지역의 도시들이 우리와 함께 연대하고 협력하며 어떻게 하면 세계 평화와 그리고 우리들의 번영에 이바지할 것인지 지혜를 모을 때입니다. 기존 전통적인 국가 외교면 맡겨둘 수 없는 일입니다. 우리 지방 정부가 다시 나서야 합니다. 지방 정부 외교의 활성화로 세계 평화 번영에 이바지하는 그날이 오기를 기대합니다. 함께해 주신 여러분 감사합니다.
고맙습니다. 세계 도시들과 손을 잡고 더욱더 평화로운 지구촌을 만들기 위한 제주특별자치도의 또 오이홍훈 지사님의 말씀을 함께 청해 들어봤습니다. UAM이라든가 그린수소 또 민간우주사업 등 우리 제주가 추진하고 있는 다양한 정책들에 이곳에 함께하고 계시는 세계 많은 리더 여러분들께서 관심 가져주시고 관련 협력을 함께 이루어질 수 있도록 도와주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 이어서 두 번째 기조연설 청해 듣겠습니다. 제주의 교류 의향 도시고요. 또 제주와 비슷한 아픔을 안고 또 평화 증진을 위해서 노력하고 있는 도시죠. 오늘 일본 오키나와 현에서 귀한 걸음 해주셨습니다. 테루야 요시미 부지사께서 함께해 주셨는데요. 앞으로 모셔서 기조연설 청해 듣겠습니다. 여러분 테루야 요시미 부지사님을 따뜻한 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
開催愚僧用中華ナビラ、皆さんこんにちは。日本国沖縄県副知事の照屋芳美でございます。本日は第18回最終フォーラムにおいて皆様にお話しする機会をいただき大変ありがとうございます。本フォーラムには県知事の玉城デニーが参加する予定でありましたが、台風が沖縄本島を直撃する見込みとなったことから、災害対策本部の責任者である知事は、沖縄にとどまざるを得ないことになり、私が知事の代理で参りました。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。早速ですが、沖縄県における地域外交の取り組みについて、プレゼンテーションを行います。本日はまず沖縄県の紹介、沖縄の平和を希求する心、それから沖縄県の観光、経済やさまざまな分野での交流の取り組みを説明し、最後に沖縄県が地域外交に取り組むことについての考えを説明いたします。沖縄県は日本の南西部に位置しており、東西約 1000km、南北約 400km の海域に点在する47の有人島を含む160もの島々で構成されるエリアからなっております。沖縄の那覇、県都那覇を中心に半径3000キロの円、これは大体飛行機で4時間の距離でありますけれども、この範囲内には東京をはじめソウル、北京、上海、香港、台北、マニラ、ハノイなどのアジアの主要都市、またロシア極東の中心都市、ウラジオストクが含まれています。はい。 沖縄は日本の他の地域とは異なる独自の歴史があります。1400年代から450年もの間、当時、琉球王国という独立した小国として、近隣諸国などとの外交や貿易を通じて友好関係を結びました。この時、沖縄に伝わったものが、多様性に富んだ独特の文化を育み、それが今でも受け継がれております。琉球王国は1800年代後半には日本に編入され、沖縄県として歩みます。経済的理由などから沖縄では1900年のハワイ移住を皮切りに多くの県民が北米、南米、南洋諸島などへ移民しました。やがて第二次世界大戦を迎えた沖縄では、住民を巻き込んだ過酷な地上戦、沖縄戦が行われ、県民の4人に1人が犠牲となり、多くの尊い命が失われ、かけがえのない文化遺産が破壊されました。1945年の終戦後、米軍統治下の時代に入ります。戦災からの復興には、移民したウチナンチュからの物資などの支援があり、このような歴史が世界に広がるウチナンチュのネットワークにもつながっています。そして1972年に日本へ復帰し、今日に至っております。沖縄県民は先の沖縄戦における凄惨な体験を通し、またそれらを後世に語り継ぐことで、命の尊さと平和の大切さを肌身で感じながら、世界の恒久平和の実現を強く求め続けています。続いて、沖縄県が世界の恒久平和を求める取り組みをいくつか紹介いたします。平和の礎は、沖縄の歴史と風土の中で培われた平和の心を広く内外に伝え、世界の恒久平和を願い、国籍や軍人、民間人の区別なく、沖縄戦などで亡くなられたすべての人々の使命を刻む記念碑として、太平洋戦争沖縄戦終結50周年を記念して、1995年に建設をいたしました。沖縄県平和記念資料館は、平和の創造と人類の恒久平和に寄与する拠点的な施設として、2000年に新築移転いたしました。国内外から多くの観光客や修学旅行生が訪れ、沖縄における平和教育や平和発信に大きな役割を果たしております。沖縄平和賞は、沖縄と地理的、歴史的に関わりの深いアジア太平洋地域の平和の構築、維持に貢献した個人や団体を顕彰するもので、2001年に創設しています。第1回受賞者の中村哲を支援するペシャワール会を皮切りに、これまで11の団体へ贈賞しています。沖縄県は平和を希求する沖縄の心を引き続き県内外に発信し、これからも恒久平和の確立に向けて取り組んでまいります。沖縄県が推進している国際交流等の取り組みを紹介します。沖縄県の主要産業は観光業です。観光は平和のパスポートと言われることがあります。旅行先の文化や人々と交流することで、異文化の理解を進め、平和につながるという考えがあります。また、沖縄県では、旺盛な観光需要により、日本国内はもとより、アジア各都市と航空便等が就航しています。経済的なつながりは、相互の発展や交流を促進し、地域の安定をもたらすものと考えております。この沖縄の観光経済を支えているのが、沖縄独自の自然、伝統文化、芸能などのソフトパワーです。また沖縄県は各地域との連携などで交流を進めています。チェジュ島とは1996年に共同声明を締結し、島嶼地域の観光施策や環境問題に関する会議など、自治体間における国際協調の取り組みを進めているほか、両地域の女性団体の相互交流や平和交流に関する取り組みが行われています。中国の福建省とは、昨年、友好憲章締結25周年を迎え、新たに公費留学生相互派遣協議書へ署名し、両地域の相互発展のため、友好関係を一層深めていくこととしています。最近では2022年8月、沖縄県とパラオ共和国は、島嶼地域の共通課題の解決を図るため、友好関係の強化に関する覚書を締結いたしました。 沖縄県は過去に多くの移民をハワイや北米、南米等に送り出しました。その子孫など沖縄にゆかりを持つ人々のネットワークを作るため、1990年から5年に一度、世界のウチナーンチ大会を開催しています。ウチナネットワークはその歴史とつながりを継承し、沖縄独自のソフトパワーを通した多元的な交流をさらに発展させることで、沖縄の未来を切り開いていこうとする交流ネットワークです。このように沖縄県ではさまざまな分野における経済、国際交流を通じて、相互の発展や理解の促進に取り組んでいます。最後に、これからの沖縄県独自の地域外交の取り組みについて説明をいたします。沖縄県では、県の自律的発展と県民一人一人が豊かさを実感できる社会の実現を目指す上で、東アジアをはじめ、アジア太平洋地域の平和と安定が必要と考えています。このため、我々は沖縄が有するソフトパワー等を活用し、アジア太平洋地域の平和構築と持続的な発展に貢献したいと考え、地域外交室という部署を設置し、積極的に沖縄の平和を希求する心を発信することなどに取り組んでまいります。琉球国時代から万国診療、すなわち国々の架け橋となることを目指してきた沖縄は、平和貢献の地域協力外交の展開や交流ネットワークの形成など、21世紀の万国診療を構築いたします。以上で講演を終了します。ご清聴ありがとうございました。一平二平デビル。
고맙습니다. 오키나와에 대한 소개와 그리고 오키나와가 추진하고 있는 평화 활동까지 자세하게 소개해 주신 일본 오키나와 현 테러의 유시미 부지사님께 진심으로 감사 인사드리겠습니다. 아무쪼록 우리 제주와도 다양한 교류를 통해서 양 도시의 성장을 꾀할 수 있는 초석을 마련할 수 있었으면 하는 바람입니다. 이제 기조연설 마지막 연설이 되겠는데요. 우리 제주와 1995년부터 무려 28년째 그 연을 이어오고 있는 곳입니다. 제주의 자매 도시이기도 하죠. 중국 하이난성의 빠덜 비서장께서 오늘 함께해 주고 계시는데요. 비서장님 모셔서 기조연설 청해 듣겠습니다. 여러분 따뜻한 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
尊敬的吴林勋阁下，尊敬的冲绳县的赵吴义师副知事阁下，女士们、先生们、朋友们，今天在美丽的济州岛与各位嘉宾和朋友一道畅叙合作，共谋发展，我感到十分的荣幸。首先呢，我代表海南省委省政府，向精心策划本次论坛，为大家提供交流平台的济州岛政府表示热烈祝贺和衷心的感谢。济州论坛举办18年以来，一直以和平与繁荣为宗旨，已经发展成为十分具有影响力的区域性论坛。刚才听到了这个吴林勋知事和冲绳县副知事的发言，我受到了很多启发。济州岛、冲绳县和中国的海南省都是地方对外交往的先行者。那么大家都知道，当前中国的海南正在加快建设具有世界影响力的中国特色自由贸易港。2018年的4月，中国的习近平主席向全世界宣布要建设中国特色自由贸易港，这是习近平主席亲自谋划、亲自部署、亲自推动的重大国家战略，彰显了中国对外开放、积极推动经济全球化的决心。5年以来，海南省高举新时代改革开放的旗帜，对标世界最高水平开放形态，初步形成了具有全球竞争力的开放政策和制度体系。这里我想重点介绍的呢，第一，海南是中国内地对外资最为开放的地方。海南有中国内地最短的外商投资的负面清单和第一份跨境服务贸易的负面清单。第二呢，海南是中国内地税负最低的地方。中国内地现行的一般的企业所得税是25%左右， 而在海南自由贸易港是15%。中国内地现行的个人所得税的税率最高是45%，而在海南最高才按15%来征收。第三，海南的开放型政策体系稳定可预期。中华人民共和国专门颁布了《中华人民共和国海南自由贸易港法》，这是中国内地在国家层面上首次为一个省份单独立法，目的就是要告诉全世界的投资者，海南对外开放不会变，优惠的政策不会变，光明的前景也不会变。5年以来，海南的经济外向度大幅度提升，一批大型的跨国企业在海南落地，市场的主体的增量和实际使用外资的总额均超过了过去30年的总和，经济外向度大幅度提高，海南日益成为全球投资的新热土。那么我们取得了以下的成果，一个呢是产业结构持续优化。我们现在4大主导产业就是旅游业、现代服务业、高新技术产业和热带特色农业，正在逐步成型起势，绿色发展的动能更足。我们正在推动的清洁能源岛正在加快推进，清洁能源的装机比重和新能源汽车的保有量，在中国这个处于较高的水平。国际的朋友圈不断的提高，我们今年成功的举办了博鳌亚洲论坛的年会和第3届中国国际消费品博览会，与全球45个国家的66个省市建立了友好的省市关系。我们也发起了全球自贸港区的伙伴关系的倡议。女士们、先生们、朋友们，大道不孤，天下一家。在当前的地缘政治环境下，次国家外交可以采取更灵活、更多元的方式进行国际合作，在推动地区可持续和平和繁荣中发挥重要的作用。海南愿意为此贡献力量。我们将充分发挥3个优势，一个呢是背靠中国超大规模的人口市场，连接中国内地和东南亚2个全球最活跃的市场的区位优势。第二呢是零关税、低税率、减税制和贸易投资、跨境资金流动、人员进出、运输的自由便利以及数据安全有序流动的政策优势。我刚才说的这些呢，都是海南自由贸易港建设的基本政策。3是海南特有的青山绿水、碧海蓝天的生态优势。在此呢，我也借这个机会，提3点建议。一是呢，要加强互学互鉴，做守望相助的好邻居，在我们尊重各自国情、法律和监管政策的基础上，围绕着这个规则、规制、管理和标准等制度性进行开放，相互借鉴有益的经验和良好的实践，坚持绿色低碳发展，在节能减排、清洁能源制造和应用、构建绿色低碳产业体系等方面进行合作，携手应对气候变化的挑战。2是呢，加强互利互惠，做团结协作的好伙伴。我们共同抓住 RCEP 开放机遇，推动商品、资金、人才等要素有序的流动，做到商品互相推动、客源互送、资源共享、市场共拓。3是呢，加强互通互访，做共谋发展的好朋友，加快交通的互联，支持政府部门、商业协会、贸易投资促进机构、智库等建立务实高效的交流机制，携手推动地方合作迈上新的台阶。韩国有句谚语，有朋友相伴，再远的路也不觉得累。中国呢也有一句老话，亲戚越走越近，朋友越走越亲。我们也热诚地欢迎各界企业和各界朋友到海南去考察交流、投资兴业、旅游休闲、工作生活，也诚挚地邀请大家参加今年11月在海南举办的第24届岛屿观光政策论坛，共享海南自由贸易港的发展机遇，共创可持续的和平与繁荣的未来。谢谢大家。
네, 고맙습니다. 이 도시간의 글로벌 외교를 위해서 하이난성에서도 굉장한 활동을 많이 하고 계시는데요. 관련해서 여러분께 소개를 해드렸습니다. 11월에 관광정책 포럼이 진행이 된다고 하니까 함께하고 계시는 각 국가의 또 각 도시의 관계자 여러분들 관심 가져주시고 함께해 주시기 바랍니다. 이제 패널 토론 진행을 해야 될 텐데요. 그 전에 오늘 함께해 주신 분들 잠시 오늘 이 소중한 추억 기록에 남기고자 기념 촬영하고 그리고 바로 패널 토론 진행하겠습니다. 오늘 기조연설 함께해 주신 세 분 앞쪽으로 모시겠고요. 그리고 함께해 주실 연사 여러분들과 패널 여러분들께서도 앞쪽으로 나와주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 네, 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. 어서 오십시오. 그리고 잠시 후에 있을 패널 토론에 연사 여러분들 그리고 패널리스트, 패널 여러분들께서도 함께해 주시기 바랍니다. 무대로 모시겠습니다. 오늘 이렇게 전 세계 또 각 도시에 함께하고 계시는 분들이 앞으로 글로벌 외교의 가치에 대해서 그리고 글로벌 외교 관련된 활동을 위해서 어떤 의견을 갖고 계신지 나누는 자리가 될 것입니다. 잠시 후에 펼쳐질 이 토론 시간에도 여러분 함께해 주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 그리고 정말 먼 거리 마다 않고 오늘 이렇게 각 도시에서 함께해 주셨습니다. 감사하는 의미로 네, 잠시 기념 촬영하겠습니다. So now we'd like to take a photo. Please face the camera. Show us your big smile. 3, 2, 1. 그리고 함께 오늘 이 세션 축하하는 의미로 박수를 치면서 손을 좀 잡아볼까요? Cross the hand. 네, 이렇게 함께 친구가 되는 의미로 함께하고 있습니다. 우리 참석자 여러분들께서 이 자리에 함께 박수로 축하해 주신다면 분위기가 좀 좋아질 것 같아요. 고맙습니다. 고맙습니다. Thank you very much. Please return your seats. Thank you. 고맙습니다. 자, 그럼 이제 패널 토론 진행을 하겠는데요. 예, 패널 토론에 함께해 주실 분들은 그대로 무대 위에서 자리 착석해 주시면 되지 않을까요? 네, 패널 토론 바로 진행하겠습니다. 오늘 패널 토론에서는 오늘의 주제지요. 또 이 글로벌 외교 관련해서 다양한 얘기들을 나눌 텐데요. 패널 토론에 함께해 주실 패널 여러분들 다시 한번 무대로 모시겠습니다. 잠시 후에 여러분과 함께 지속가능한 평화와 번영을 위한 지방외교의 역할은 무엇인지 전문가들의 의견을 나누는 시간 갖겠습니다. 오늘 이 패널 토론의 좌장은 이성윤 교수님께서 함께 맡아주시겠는데요. 현재 터프츠대학교 플라이처 법률외교대학원의 교수로 재직 중에 있습니다. 저서로는 더 시스터, 북한에서 가장 강력한 여인, 김여정의 비범한 이야기라는 저서가 있고요. 뉴욕타임즈와 월스트리트저널, 워싱턴포스트에서 한반도와 동북아시아의 국제정치에 대한 다수의 에세이를 게재를 하신 바 있습니다. 또 미국의 유명 정치 전문 매체죠. 더 힐에는 바이든 대통령은 제주 4.3 평화공원을 방문해야 한다라는 제목의 기고문을 게시하기도 했습니다. 그래서 저희 제주와는 또 특별한 인연을 갖고 계시는데요. 지금부터 좌장님께 마이크 넘겨서 다양한 이야기를 함께 청해 듣겠습니다. 이성윤 교수님 부탁드립니다.
감사합니다. It's always an exquisite pleasure to visit this incomparably beautiful island, Jeju. And I'm particularly honored to introduce our distinguished speakers today and to serve as your moderator. First, next to my left, we have Ms. Champa Patel, Executive Director for Governments and Policy at Climate Group. Previously, she was Director for Innovations at International Crisis Group and also the Director for the Asia Pacific Program at Chatham House in London. To her left, we have Vice Mayor of Irvine City Council in California, a longtime resident educator, business owner, businesswoman of Orange County, California. In November 2020, Ms. Tammy Kim set a record with a landslide victory in being elected, winning against 13 other candidates to be elected for the first time as a Korean American woman to the City Council of Irvine. To her left, we have Ms. Dawn Bennett, Ambassador of New Zealand to the Republic of Korea since February this year. Previously, she was the Managing Director for Australia in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade of New Zealand, and she has served previously in Beijing, in Brussels, and Paris. And to her left, we have Ambassador Ko Yun-ju, Ambassador in residence at the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province. Previously, Ambassador Ko was the DCM, Deputy Chief of Mission at the Republic of Korea Embassy in Washington, D.C., and also Director General for North American Bureau. He has served in Xi'an, China, and also in Baghdad, and also in New York City. So we have a very distinguished panel, and without further ado, may I ask you, Ms. Patel, to start with your comments?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you this morning and talk through the importance and the role the subnational governments can play in terms of ensuring peace and security. I'm here on behalf of the Climate Group, where we're the Secretariat for Under 2. It's a coalition made up of 167 state and regional governments that work to ensure climate action. Now, why is responding to climate change important for peace and security? With record heat waves, droughts, rising sea levels affecting many communities, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region, where we have many countries with low-lying coastlines. It is an important peace and security issue, because what we see is that even though the relationship between climate change and conflict or risks of instability is not direct or linear, climate change can exacerbate pre-existing vulnerabilities. And the role of subnational governments is really important in ensuring peace and security. In conflict, these contexts can be even more compounded, where vulnerable people are often at the intersection of multiple intersecting crises. Yet we know action at the national level is challenging because of the geopolitical context. And it's not just the geopolitical context. COVID disrupted supply chains that was then further impacted by the conflict in Ukraine. So what we see is successive crises compounded by climate change impacts, ensuring that it's really difficult to ensure stability at the national and subnational level. Now, these risks can be highly localized. So, for example, if you look at, Bangladesh, you have risks along the coastline, but it's not necessarily that it affects all parts of each country equally. And this is where subnational governments are really important, because what they do is work at the local level. They are often the level of government closest to people, closest to the communities that they serve, and they often have large jurisdictional powers to address peace and stability issues. They can raise revenue through local taxation, through green bonds. They can direct that revenue towards climate change goals. They can help build resilience at the local level and help ensure that people and communities are supported, ensuring peace. So how do we do this? There are a number of ways in which we help support subnational governments. So the first is to help them set ambition. What we do is we run projects. So using satellite data, using different mapping tools, we help subnational governments map their itineraries so that they know where to focus their mitigation efforts. So we don't take a blanket approach to all industries, whether it's energy, industry, transport. What we do is look at which are the industries that have the highest emissions at the subnational level, and then help those governments develop tailored plans to tackle that. We also support strong governance. So what we do is we work with high-level leaders from across our subnational governments, including in Korea with the governor of Chungnam province, to ensure that we're driving action at the international stage. Subnational governments are really powerful, but they don't have a voice in processes such as the UNFCCC process, which are very state-led. So what we do is ensure that we can make sure their voice is heard. So, for example, currently we're working with subnational governments on the NDC process to ensure the subnationals are meaningfully involved in that process, that they are able to work with their national government counterparts to ensure that we can have targeted plans at both national and subnational level. The other way in which we assist is through technical knowledge and peer-to-peer learning. Currently, we're working with 8 to 10 governments, subnational governments, to support them to do green budgeting and green public procurement. So we work with them through the whole chain of how can subnational governments raise revenue, how can they do green budgeting, and then how can they use that budgeting to support green public procurement. And this is something that we do hand in hand with our governments to, learn from each other, but for us also to support them in that journey. And the last thing we do is showcase the success of subnational governments on the international stage. The dynamism, the creativity, the innovation that is happening at subnational level is a story that is not told enough on the international stage. So what we want to do is take those case studies, take those successes, and show how subnational governments are taking the leadership in the absence of international coordination to ensure the climate goals are met. Finally, for sustainable peace and security, we can't just address mitigation. So what we have to ensure is that adaptation and resilience, a just transition, are all integrated into one approach. And often we talk about these things in silos, but you can have a cleaner, greener world and still have instability, still have a lack of peace, still have conflict risks. Because it's not enough to have a greener world. How do we make sure that people are also able to thrive and not just survive? So what's really important to us is to make sure the resilience is built into mitigation programs, that we think about adaptation, and we meaningfully think through how do we support people in a just transition so that they can move into the new industries of tomorrow. For sustainable peace and security, we need climate action that builds resilience, better disaster response, so the subnational governments can cope with the shocks that do not become destabilizing. Subnational governments have an important role to play, and we're really proud with the Under 2 Coalition that we can support them in that.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive and detailed explanation of the good work that you do. Next, Vice Mayor Kim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, so thank you very much. Do we have slides? Well, before we get started, as we're loading up here, again, Tammy Kim here from the city of Irvine. So just to let you know a little bit about the city of Irvine, we are located in Southern California, about 64 kilometers from the city of Los Angeles. We are the 13th largest city in the state of California. We are the fastest growing city in the state of California and the 10th fastest growing city in the entire United States. So our population is made up of about 320,000 residents, 50% of whom are Asian American. So we have a very diverse community. We have a strong, not only Asian community from Korea, Taiwan, Japan, mainland China, and Vietnam, but also from the Middle East as well. We have every major world religion represented in the city of Irvine, including, we have we have 3 large mega Korean churches. We have a Korean Catholic church. We have a Buddhist temple. We have an Islamic center, and every world religion. Sorry, is there something I'm supposed to do with the PPT? 없어요? Okay. 죄송합니다. Anyway, just to sort of go over the facts, I'm really sorry. So we're a relatively newer city. We were established in 1971, and we are a master plan community, which means we were very much like some of the international cities here in Asia, we were planned and we have specific land use within the city. We have first-class universities, we have education centers, we have a strong business community in which we have more than 22,000 businesses headquartered in the city of Irvine. We are about 66 square miles in size, which is, I'm so sorry, that would be 106 kilometers in size. So we're very big with a lot of open space. And when we speak about Irvine's diversity and as a subnational entity, with a lot of the diversity we have also comes responsibility. We have an area in which you have a lot of diverse communities that have interest. So we have our Global Village Festival every year. We also have various sister city relationships throughout the world. And to give you some examples of some sister city relationships, I'm sorry, I had a PPT, and so since we don't have that, I'm kind of going off some notes. So I apologize. But to talk about the sister cities that we have in Japan, the city of Tsukuba, the city of Hermosillo in Mexico. We have Taoyuan in Taiwan and Seochagu here in Korea. And so these are some of the sister cities relationships that we have. And with these sister city relationships, we have an opportunity to build peace and cooperation throughout the globe. We do business exchanges, we do education and cultural exchanges. And this is really important because when we're talking about adding to the diversity of our community, having these sister city relationships are key to that. But also the other thing that we have that's very unique within the city of Irvine is we are a global learning center in the city, within the entire region. We serve as that education and cultural hub. So for example, we are in Irvine, the home of Sejong Hakdang, King Sejong Institute, to promote Korean language and culture. We also have the largest Chinese school located in the city of Irvine. We also have one of the largest Hindi schools to teach Hindi for Indian diaspora. We also have a Tamil school that's located in the city of Irvine, as well as a large Farsi school. So these educational hubs really serve as a way of fostering the community-based and the community connections that exist within the city of Irvine. Oh, you found it, thank you. And so, sorry, I was jumping all over the place, so sorry about that. But as we know, one of the key features within Irvine is our strong focus on economic development. 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies are located within the city of Irvine. And as a matter of fact, yesterday I met with a company here in Korea that we're hoping to have their U.S. headquarters within the city of Irvine. Some of the Korean companies and global companies that are featured and housed within Irvine include Kia Motors, which has their U.S. Headquarters in Irvine, as well as Hyundai Capital, Hyundai Uneng, and Google and Mazda all have corporate headquarters within the city of Irvine. We also have Hanwha Q-Cells that's based there as well. Next. And I went over the sister cities that we have. Next. Oh, okay. And one of the things that we're really proud about is the various international delegations that we bring to the city of Irvine. So we had the mayor of Ansan, we had Kukiwan, because one of the things that we are doing within the city of Irvine is we're hoping to be the regional hub of Taekwondo and Taekwondo education within the city of Irvine as well. Next. And I mentioned about our Irvine Global Village Festival. So within the County of Orange, we are the regional hub for the various consulate generals to come in and celebrate various cultures. Next. And we have various international support through these various channels that we have. Next. And so some of our priorities include, when it comes to sister cities and what our role is as a subnational agency, is to continue to build relationships, prioritizing the exchange of information, as well as recognizing the role that subnational diplomacy plays within a greater regional aspect. Is that the last slide? Okay. Now, some of the things that I want to talk about is, when we have the diversity that we have, we take that with a lot of responsibility. So we talked about celebrating the various cultures that exist within our city. But with that comes a lot of responsibility. And sometimes when you do one thing for one group, you make another group unhappy. So for example, we have a very large Taiwanese community. So and I mentioned that we have sister cities. When a previous city council wanted to have a sister city relationship in China, we had a lot of Taiwanese residents who were very unhappy about that. And there was a large protest. And, so these are the things that exist. One of the things that I was looking to do was have a monument because the Armenian community had asked to recognize the Armenian genocide. But with that, you make other groups not happy. So I received a letter from the Turkish Consulate General in opposition to that. So these are some of the things that we have to think about, and we have to really sort of understand how much we're going to weigh in as a subnational organization, how much we're going to say, and when you appease one group, will you make another group unhappy? Some of the universal things that we have stood up for is we have, as a city, upheld women's rights in Iran, because this was something that our residents asked for, and we issued a resolution supporting women's freedom in the nation of Iran. But again, there's a lot that can be done, and I feel that as diverse as the city of Irvine is, there's a lot we can do, and we will continue to press forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Kim, for that wonderful, colorful, vibrant portrayal of a fast-growing, multicultural city. Henceforth, I'm thinking of moving to Irvine, if you'll have me. Thank you. Next, Ambassador Bennett. Thank you.
여러분, 안녕하십니까? 저는 주한 뉴질랜드 대사 돈 베넷입니다. Ngā mihi mahana kia koutou katoa, mai I tuku whenua o Aotearoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. I greet you in Te Reo Māori, the language of the indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and one of our indigenous languages. It is an honour to be here today to speak with you about the role of subnational diplomacy for sustainable peace and prosperity. This is a topic that is very dear to the hearts of New Zealanders, and it's very important to our foreign policy. I'm going to speak today about the unique status of the Māori people, the indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, as a treaty partner in New Zealand, and how this influences New Zealand's foreign policy, and how that, in turn, contributes to our objectives for sustaining peace and prosperity in the world. Just to start by defining, the Māori people in New Zealand are not stakeholders like other stakeholders, NGOs, businesses, civil society. They are a full partner of the New Zealand government. So in a way, this is not about subnational diplomacy, it's about New Zealand's national diplomacy, but how that incorporates the views of the Māori people. The particular status of the Māori people in New Zealand is a recognition of the unique position and the inherent authority that Māori people hold as tangata whenua, the people of the land. This dates back to the Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed in 1840 in New Zealand between a representative of Queen Victoria as the British sovereign of that time and the majority, although not all, of the tribal leaders of the different Māori tribes in New Zealand. Since that time, getting on for 200 years ago now, our journey as a nation has not been straightforward and it is still evolving. But the Treaty of Waitangi and the origins of our nation has really shaped our identity and values as people. The special status of Māori as indigenous peoples to New Zealand is very central to our national identity. Over the years, interpreting the treaty has led to a number of enduring principles coming out. One of them is this partnership concept that I just mentioned, and another is tino rangatiratanga, which means self-determination. And according to these principles, Māori are, as I said, not a subnational group, but the government's full partner. And this partnership between the New Zealand government and the Māori people, or the Crown, I should say, as the New Zealand government and the Māori people, is our most important relationship. It's the cornerstone also of all of New Zealand's international relationships. We believe that values matter in international relations and in foreign policy. They are aspirational, and they help us define the world that we want to see and the international solutions that we are aiming for. They basically shape our end goal. Currently, the New Zealand Minister of Foreign Affairs is our first woman Minister of Foreign Affairs and also our first Indigenous Minister of Foreign Affairs. According to our Minister, we have 4 very clear principles that guide all of our foreign policy, and they are drawn from the Indigenous Māori view of the world. The first of these is manaakitanga, which means respect, and this is a two-way street. We treat other countries and all of our partners with respect, and in return, we expect to be treated also with respect. The second principle is kotahitanga. This means unity and diversity. We often think of it in terms of teamwork because we believe any team is strengthened by both unity and diversity across all of the team members. The third principle is kaitiakitanga, which is the concept of guardianship. Basically, we are all here just as guardians of the planet and of the land for future generations. And the Māori view is very clear that when the land is well, so are the people. The fourth principle is whanongatanga, which is family and connectedness. It is the concept that at the end of the day, we are all one people. So these 4 principles lie at the heart of all of our foreign policy, and they guide all of our decisions. We're very proud of our independent and values-based foreign policy, and all of our foreign policy decisions are based on these 4 principles. Now, what does this look like in practice? As an example, I can tell you, for example, that in trade policy, when we hold trade negotiations, we always fully consult our Māori partners, and they are instrumental in terms of what the Indigenous aspirations are and the Indigenous objectives are of any trade agreement that we enter into. Also, when New Zealand hosted APEC in 2021, we had an Indigenous segment to that whole conference. We have also initiated the IPETCA, the Indigenous Peoples Economic and Trade Cooperation Arrangement, and there are a number of countries now participating in that arrangement. And in our most recent free trade agreements with the UK and the EU, each one of those has a specific Indigenous chapter within it, dealing with the objectives and the issues of Indigenous people. Now, Māori have always been a trading people, and the Māori economy is growing fast. Māori business interests are very strong in primary goods, also in geothermal, digital, education, tourism, and many others. But I've always been told when Māori talk trade, they don't just mean products and free trade agreements. For them, it's about relationships, reciprocity, and responsibility to our communities. You'll notice that these are very similar concepts to those guiding our overall foreign policy principles. To tie this into the theme of the forum of sustainable peace and prosperity, everyone will have noticed that there's been quite a surge recently in geopolitical competition. This has been happening around the world, but it's especially noticeable in the Indo-Pacific region. It's driven by major powers seeking to assert their influence and shape the regional order. They are acting in their interests, and each one is guided by their own economic, political, and strategic goals and interests. But it makes for a very complex environment for us all to navigate, and this is especially tricky for small and medium-sized countries. We've noticed three major shifts in the way the world is operating at the moment. The first shift is a shift from rules to power. That is to say that the international rules and the liberal underpinnings of those rules are getting more and more contested as more states have the power and the inclination to challenge those rules, or sometimes just ignore them. The second shift is one from economics to security. Previously, a lot of the world governed their international relations with a real focus on trade and economic interests. But more and more now, we are seeing a diplomacy centered on power and security interests instead. The third shift is a shift from efficiency to resilience. That is to say, in the context of economics and supply chains, we're moving from a sort of just-in-time operation to just-in-case. And this often leads to protectionist tendencies, which again can be tricky for small and medium-sized economies. We believe that the response to these geopolitical headwinds has to be based on our national identity, which in turn is based on our values. Both of these, our national identity and our values, are stronger for integrating Indigenous Māori culture and approaches. The Māori worldview is deeply rooted in interconnectedness, reciprocity, and sustainability. It emphasizes a holistic relationship between people, nature, and spirituality. And in our foreign policy, we acknowledge and embrace this worldview as part of how our country approaches the whole world. That guides us in navigating the complex global challenges that we're all facing, and fostering meaningful partnerships and promoting sustainable and inclusive development. For example, in the area of climate change and sea level rise, which Champa also talked about as a real crisis for the world. This is very concerning for New Zealand and for our Pacific Ocean neighbours, our Pacific Island neighbours. We believe that the ocean is what connects us. It's not something that separates countries, it's something that connects countries. It is really important, and we often think about it as being the Pacific as being a blue Pacific continent rather than an empty space with small countries in it. We also believe that having a worldview based on our country's Indigenous values and approaches helps us to model and to promote an inclusive and culturally sensitive and sustainable way to finding solutions to these complex geopolitical challenges of today. Solutions that we need to build an environment in which all countries can thrive. I'd just like to finish now with a Māori proverb, what we call a whakatoki. And it goes, he aha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. Thank you. 감사합니다. 노래라 tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you very much. I think the traditional worldview and values of family, interconnectedness, respect for land and the planet resonate in Confucian societies like Korea, China, and Japan, and certainly the times call for the revival of such values. So thank you very much for that rich presentation. Ambassador Ko.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Let me introduce the Professor Lee Seung-yoon. Professor Lee Seung-yoon was my teacher when I was in that Fletcher School and Tufts University. But he's still young, but I'm getting gray hair, so that's a big difference. So let me first thank Professor Lee Seung-yoon and distinguished panelists for sharing thought for the subnational diplomacy issue. And then I'm very also pleased to hear the speeches from leaders, the Jeju and Okinawa and Hainan province government. And I think this is a really a rare opportunity for three countries, local government leaders getting together at the same time. And also three provinces like Jeju, Okinawa, and Hainan, similarly, geographically similarly situated, having very challenging geopolitical and socio-economic issues to deal with. So for me, subnational diplomacy as an ambassador for international relations for Jeju government, it's been around five or 6 months. So based on my experience, I'd like to first talk about the Jeju's agenda for diplomacy, and then what should be Jeju's diplomacy to address such a Jeju agenda. And then next, finally, how the subnational diplomacy contribute to sustainable peace and prosperity in the region under the situation that geopolitical competition between United States and China dictates the current environment. So let me begin with Jeju's agenda. I think this is really related to the Jeju's identity. So as you know, Jeju is a beautiful island, and then has around like 15 million tourists coming every year. And then agriculture and fishery industries are main industries. So this identity makes connectivity is the most important the agenda for Jeju to sustainable development. And then another feature of Jeju is related to the environment. Jeju is UNESCO designating biosphere the reserve, and another is on World Natural Heritage, and then lastly Global Geopark. So we call it three crown of the UNESCO designation. So the maintaining environment is a really important element of the Jeju agenda. So the Jeju set the goal for carbon-free island by the year of 2030, and also plastic-free by 2040. And then Jeju also faces with circumstances from the climate change. So the frequent irregular weather and unpredictable weather, and also the rising ocean temperature requires the proper policy response from the Jeju government. And then one more feature of Jeju is that the strong commitment to global peace and human rights. I think that is deeply rooted in the memories and scars and lessons left from a tragic April 3rd incident in Jeju, which costed around 10% of innocent population at the time. And then Jeju, as you know, has designated as the piece of world, the island of world peace. So that is a kind of the Jeju's identity. So this identity, I think, frames the international relations for Jeju. So therefore, I think the Jeju diplomacy is to address such the Jeju agenda through the international cooperations. So based on the Jeju's agenda, I think how the Jeju's diplomacy has gone by so far is first about the connectivity. So it requires Jeju to work for increasing the human and physical connections with the overseas cities. I think these are exchange of people through tourism and overseas study, and also economic transactions of trade and investment, and also establishment of directly connecting flights and maritime transportation lines with the other overseas cities. So this is the thing that Jeju is currently doing. And then the new governor's motto is like ASEAN plus Alpha initiative. I think that is exact reflection of the connectivity diplomacy issue for Jeju government. So this is kind of one of examples of such implementation. And then secondly, in regard to maintaining the environment and fighting against the climate change, Jeju is encouraging the use of electric vehicles and renewable energy resources, so that Jeju became #1 the province among Korean other provinces for the usage ratio of the non-fossil fuel energy resources. And then I think the climate change also, strongly affects the Jeju's industry, especially for agriculture and fishery industries. So Jeju government is making efforts to have a partnership with the other countries, provinces, especially for R&D and export training, because that climate change make future potential species and fruits and plants to grow in Jeju is becoming different. So based on the climate change, Jeju needs to prepare for technical advancement for that preparations. And also Jeju joined the Under 2 coalition that Ambassador Patel talked about. That is association of global like-minded provinces and cities work together for addressing the climate change issues. And also, as a renewable resource, Jeju is investing green hydrogen production facilities. So those are kind of policies and international cooperation for the addressing environment and the climate change. And lastly, in regard to the peace commitment by Jeju government, Jeju government established April 3rd Peace Foundation and also International Peace Foundation as well, and then doing peace projects. One of the project is to award April 3rd Peace Prize to a distinguished person who contributed to advancement of global peace and human rights. And also Jeju initiated to have a partnership called Global Peace Cities Solidarity with Osnabrück of Germany and Verdun of France to work for the peace promotion globally. And then jointly we did a photo exhibition last year on Ukraine war, and also we held a small scale of music peace concert together. I think this is the first our joint project to promote global peace. And then, as you know, this forum, Jeju has hosted Jeju Peace Forum since 2001. So this is the Jeju's diplomacy to address peace commitment to global society. So I think that what Jeju has been doing as diplomacy, such as people-to-people exchange and promotion of trade and investment and fighting against climate change and promotion of global peace, is really contributing to sustainable peace and prosperity in the world. Many people nowadays show the very strong concern that global issues like climate change and development aid and energy and food crisis is not properly addressed because of the geopolitical competition between the United States and China. And when I was in the Boao Forum last March in Hainan province in China, at that time, former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, showed a strong concern that United Nations Millennium Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement are falling behind their original commitment schedules because of the non-cooperation between United States and China. So I think under this geopolitical environment, I think subnational diplomacy, which mainly addresses concerns and interests of the provincial government, ironically lightly deals with the positive cooperation issues of the world. So that I can say subnational diplomacy plays a pivotal role in sustainable peace and prosperity now than ever. So I'm very much looking forward to our following discussions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. As the ambassador for international relations for Jeju, you are a stellar diplomat and representative of the Jeju government and the people of Jeju Island. We have just a few minutes for questions. If anyone has a question, would you please state your name and, if any, affiliation, and please ask, if possible, a short question for any of the panelists. Please.
Eh, こんにちは、多摩大学経営情報学部。
So please give some time to read the receivers. Channel 3 is for Japanese and 1 for Korean, 2 for English, 3 for Japanese, 4 for Chinese. Yes, so we might be ready.
はい、多摩大学経営情報学部2年生の井上慶太郎と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。タミーさんに質問がございます。はい。
네, 말씀하세요.
はい。異なる宗教が共存し合えてるっていうことが僕は大変素晴らしいことだなというふうに考えました。この文化祭り以外の取り組みとしてどのような取り組みを行っているのか、他にこの地域性というのがどのような地域性があってこのように文化の多様性、宗教の多様性が成り立っているのかということをお聞きしたいです。
Thank you for the question. I think our openness and our broad space, our public safety, our education, we have a highly educated resident base. And I think that has added to a lot of the diversity. And when you have diversity, it's not just limited to ethnicity or the food, but you also have to look at religious diversity as well and be acceptant of all religions. And that is, I think, one of the key hallmarks and differentiators of when we talk about having true diversity, how people worship is going to be key. But another thing I didn't talk about is we are building a great park within the city of Irvine, which will hold over 100-acre botanical garden. And within that botanical garden, we look to have cultural elements from different countries and different cultures to showcase their botanical cultures as well.
Well, we have 5 seconds for question number 2. If there's any burning question, sir, Andrew Salmon. Short question, please.
Also for Governor Kim, you mentioned the issue of the Armenian genocide statue and Turkish pushback. Can you just explain to us a little bit more the details on how you as a subnational actor approved this, then a national level actor, I guess from DC, responded? What was your decision-making process? Thanks.
Yeah, the decision-making process was quite simple. There was another city in California that had a Weeambu statue, the city of Glendale. Weeambu, the Comfort Woman statue. They had a Comfort Woman statue in which the Japanese government lobbied and protested. It was the Armenian community that actually helped to support the Korean community in keeping that statue. And so, in turn, as a Korean American elected, I wanted to show our appreciation and thanks to the Armenian community, which we have a large portion. And knowing that there could be pushback, I was fully aware of that possibility happening. And it wasn't the Washington, D.C., it was the Los Angeles Consulate General that protested, or sent a letter in protest to the Armenian Genocide Memorial that our council unanimously voted on.
Thank you very much. Before I turn it over to our...
No.
What was the outcome? What actually happened to the statue?
The Weeambu, or the Comfort Woman statue? No, it will be put up. It will be erected. So the Armenian community, they're joining together to figure out what it is that they want to see. It has still been approved. We did not give in to the pushback.
Thank you. I would like now to turn it over to our Master of Ceremony Extraordinaire, Ms. Munsori. But first, would you please join me with a nice round of applause for our exceptional interpreters up there. It's hard work and they are great.
고맙습니다. 그리고 오늘 이렇게 패널 세션 함께 해주신 이성윤 교수님께도 여러분 다시 한번 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 오늘 고맙습니다. 네, 긴 시간 여러분과 지속가능한 평화와 번영을 위한 지방외교의 역할이라는 주제로 다양한 얘기를 나눴습니다. 시간이 좀 아쉽긴 합니다만 여기서 마무리 짓겠습니다. 함께해 주신 여러분께 감사 인사드리면서 세션 마무리 짓겠습니다. 점심 맛있게 드십시오. 고맙습니다.